Oh, hi. Welcome to our Discord Masterclass. My name is Luisa. I'm one of the co-founders at Community One, and today we are going to go over everything you need to know about Discord analytics. I know it's kind of like a topic that not a lot of people are familiar with because it's such a new thing, but analytics is quite powerful. So we're gonna go over some of the ins and outs about how to use analytics to make your community better. Feel free to leave a chat message if you have any questions about analytics, and we are going to start here. I'm going to actually send you guys also a document. So this one has the presentation for the analytics, and I'm going to go over so we're going to take it into three parts. First is a analytics overview. Second is a Discord. Second is overview about Discord analytics. So there are a lot of analytics around Discord provides that actually no third-party providers can provide those informations to you. And then we're going to go over some of other more detailed analytics that can actually help you shape some of the actions that you can take within the community. So why do you use analytics? There are basically three things that you can track with Discord analytics. First is everything related to technical onboarding. So the key question is basically, is my server friendly enough for new user, right? That's including verification. That's including almost like the first couple minutes when the new user first learn anything about your server. And second part is engagement. Engagement is a very complicated topic. I think everybody talks about the importance of engagement, but how do you engage with members? How do you actually, there are things you can control on the engagement side. And the third part is basically call to actions, right? I'm assuming that all of you here have a commercial-based server. So you're not doing this because of some hobbies that you have, but rather you have a product, a token to sell, an app that you want people to try. So how do you measure around call to actions? Especially like if you have really engaged user, like what is the point of having really engaged users except that you wanted them to actually kind of like try a product? So those are the three things that analytics can help. I want to introduce this concept of action-oriented KPI. So this is a concept that actually Amazon has it for a very long time. So for example, right, I've read a book about how Amazon does the operation, and if Amazon wanted to say increase revenue, that is a very hard metrics to hit, right? There are so many ways you can increase revenue. So for example, in bookstore, one of the KPIs that Amazon will have is to have as many books as possible. So that is an action that the team can take, right? The team can talk to a lot of the authors and try to get book listed. So it is better when you convert result-oriented KPIs with action-oriented KPIs. Your team tended to understand actions better than results. And you kind of like as the higher level manager, your job is actually to figure out what are the actions that can convert it into this kind of results, right? But in this case, we are looking at engagement. And there are many action-oriented KPIs that can help you improve engagement. So engagement is hard, right? Clearly, it is almost like a network function. There are many things coming around in order for a community to have genuine interactions. But there are a lot of things that you can do, like you as kind of like the founders of this community that can do. First is your moderator team, right? Your core team. The more people that you talk to, the higher the engagement. So in this chart, one of the KPIs that we recommend you to track is basically how many members does your team touch on, right? So the more we call this KPI social reach, the idea here is to say like the more people you talk to, the better your management is. And that actually has a pretty direct correlation with KPIs. We also noticed that the same KPIs, basically social reach, works extremely well for regular user as well. We noticed that like the highest kind of retention you can get from a user is somebody who were like lightly invested in your community, but talking to a lot of people. They tended to stick around longer, and they tended to invest more and more time into your community because the impression is this is a really friendly community. There's a lot of people. I'm going to meet someone that I like. Though the opposite is almost the worst, right? If you have a member that is extremely intensive into like spending time into a community, but only talk to one or two people, we see them having the lowest retention rate. Another thing that you can do is that you can sort of determine the quality of your conversation. I think it's a function about what kind of members that you're getting, how do you market it. Those are the things you might not necessarily have control if you're a community manager, but you have control over how do you talk on the community. So, for example, in this case, we are looking at this is one of the KPIs that we look at how spammy is your conversation, right? So, or how meaningless in a way is your conversation, right? So we wanted to have kind of like GMGN. I think that's a cultural, so that's totally fine. But you cannot stop at GMGN, right? There needs to be kind of like a progress on how you are able to kind of like drive these users into conversation. And that started with you actually, right? If you're saying GMGN, then people are going to say GMGN. If you're asking people, oh, did you look, you have a really cool profile, like what are you thinking about this particular issues, right? You started to kind of like shape the conversation. So those are some of the things that you can actually do on the engagement side. Okay. By the way, if you have any questions, feel free to leave it on the chat. So we're going to talk about Discord native analytics. There are a lot of bots out there. We're going to mention some of them, including ours. I do think that we have the best bot, but none of the third-party suppliers can provide some of the data that Discord is providing to you. Discord analytics is not really the best. They have a huge lag. It's not exactly reliable. And we notice that sometimes they do not expose the information to you if you are just starting it out. But if you're kind of like at a bigger stage, you should take advantage of it. So first thing is announcement channel. So I really think like announcement is probably one of the most important thing that you can do. You like, especially during early stage, right? You just have to do two things. You wanted to greet users when they come into your communities, and you just regularly kind of talk about your project progress on the announcement channel. That's like, you don't need to hire a mod to do any of those things. In fact, I recommend you to take especially the announcement part yourself, right? So Discord actually have if you go to server setup, Discord has a tab called Server Insight, and under the engagement tab, you can see they give you data about which text channel do people use the most, and on the announcement chat, it will tell you like how many people have visited in the past month, right? So this will give you like some very good ideas about what is actually like how effective is your announcement channel. And this is kind of like a point, right? You like announcement channel is like literally the most important thing that you can do in the community. Another thing that you can track, which is pretty cool, is basically where your growth is coming from. So, for example, in our analytics, we give you a breakdown about how many people are coming in based on invite links. So those are things that Discord expose as an API to the developers, but Discord do not expose kind of like joins based on domain, right? So this is I don't think it's entirely accurate, but this gives you some good sense about like where you should focus your traffic on. Third is basically where your members is coming. So it's under the audience tab. As you can see here, again, like this is because I believe Discord is tracking with the IP address. So this is pretty good data as well. It gives you some idea about your audience. We're gonna go into detail about like there's a lot of people having questions about when you should host event, right? So this gives you some ideas. Usually people are most active during the evening time of their local time. So like if you're Asia, that if your audience are mostly in Asia, then clearly your most active time is in the morning. Okay, I'm going to pause here for a second to see if anybody has any questions. Okay, I'm going to talk about action-driven analytics, right? So basically, things that you can do to take actions off. And first is onboarding. Then we're going to talk about more engagement-related analytics. Those are the analytics that we provide. The reason I think we provide those analytics is because there is no other boss that provides them. And over the years, we noticed that it's either because people are asking or because we are working with a lot of community and they want those data. So to find the server inside, actually, maybe I can show it to you right now. All right. So again, it's not, I like, if it's available for you, this is like where you can find it. So you basically, for example, for our server, you go here, server, okay, sorry, it's not here. So you go here, there is server insight right here. And I believe they use kind of like a different tab now. So you go to server insight, that's it. Any other? I think you have to get to a certain size and has a certain number of engagement for the score to show. There is a lag. It's a 1 week lag. I think they show you a certain period of it, a certain period of your data. But like again, like some of the data, like nobody can have it except this group can have it. Okay. So we're gonna talk about action-oriented analytics, right? So those are data that we have. Okay, so first is think about it on the new user experience, right? First, they see, oh, there's a Discord I can join. So they click on the link and they go through a certain amount of actions and then they send a message. So this is kind of like all the analytics around that process, usually like the first couple minutes when a new user joins the server. So first thing is that you want to aim for at least 50% verification rate. So this is the kind of like the first step you can potentially lose a user. Sometimes we will notice, so for example, in this server, right, originally it was close to 80%, now it's 25%, which is a problem. This is actually in our community. So what happened is that we basically removed our verification bot and replaced it with the welcome screen. Because of that, verification is not mandatory. So that's why our number is quite low. But if you don't have welcome screen enabled and you're using, say, Vic, Dino, double points, pandas, if you're using any of those verification bots, that number should be close to 75%, in fact. So 50 is kind of like a very low level. So what are some of the issues? Like, why do people not verify? The most kind of like the treacherous case is basically when you have an out of server capture. So for example, a lot of the hacking is actually done by verification. So the way it works is it will look like a very legit server and it'll say you should verify outside of the server. So click on this link, right? And then it looks kind of like a complete legit bot, except that like once you click on the link, they drain your wallet. And because of this, a lot of people are very much afraid of clicking on links for verification. So in those cases, I would recommend for all the verification, you want to stay within the Discord, right? You don't want them to get out of the Discord, come into Discord with verification. So those are the issues. Second is basically verification minute. You want this number to be below 1. Like we see most of the communities in our database, when user verify, that number is below 1. But sometimes we can see like 5 minutes of verification. And the reason is because you have to be aware that like 70-80% of your members is going to log in through mobile. So when you see a kind of like a verified experience, when you see it on the desktop, it's very different from the mobile. So specifically, we're talking about Vic verifications. So Vic has different kind of verification, right? You can click a button and you verify, or you have CAPTCHA, right? So you basically type in random letters and they are kind of like hard to remember. When you're on the mobile version, when you do kind of verify in server CAPTCHA, what happened is that the screen black out. So it leaves kind of like the table. So you don't really have any reference on what the number is. It's actually very difficult to kind of like, if you're really busy and you want to remember 6 random digits, that was like really hard to remember to begin with. So in this case, like you wanted to, it depends, right? So if you are doing like aggressive marketing, you don't want any bots, you can use it, but you should know like there is a cost that you're paying. You're dropping some of the normal user who just go like, I don't know if I want to join this anymore. I'm gonna wait until later, and then they just never verify again. Okay. And the next thing basically is how many people chatted right away after they verified. And that number, so for example, right, this is like over an hour data. So you can download our bot. It's completely free, and you can actually track those data yourself as well. But the benchmark we have is basically 20%. Depending on how your server is set up, like for example, we were close to 50%. So like how do you improve this number, right? If you have like a 5%. So basically this means that only 5% of the user wanted to actively engage in your community when they are able to verify and see like what's happening. And by the way, chances are very high that they go through the announcement channel first before they even ever talk, because this is how they kind of leave an impression about, oh yeah, this is a legit server or this is not. So if you have a really low number, here are some of the things you can do. So this is the part where the moderators team makes a huge difference. You will be able to so there are a couple of cases why people don't talk, right? Either it's very confusing, they don't really know like where to talk. That actually happens to some. So there are many, many channels that they can talk. So that's the first thing. And the second problem is, so that's kind of like the clean UI part. Like you have a very complicated community, right? People are talking about very sophisticated topic. You should never assume, especially if you are Web3, that the users coming into a server because they are interested in like what you are building. Very high likely they don't know anything. Just their friends told them it's cool, right? So if they don't know anything and your community is kind of complicated, that can just drastically drop the initial engagement rate. And once you lost them in the first 5 minutes, chances of them coming back is much lower. So this is where the mods come in. The mods can introduce the projects, talk a bit about it, say regular things to the community members so that they can go like, oh yeah, like this is kind of like a normal server. I can learn more from here. So this is like how you kind of improve this number. Any question about those so far? Okay. And so once you finish kind of like the first 5 minutes of interactions, the second thing is everything around engagement. Okay, so like it depends on your server size and where you are. You will face a wide range of problems, and they're almost like totally different from each other. But the first one is basically when there's like the server is dead, right? There's like nobody is chatting. So for example, here, this is our server. This actually does not look bad whatsoever. So we have roughly like 3 people chatting every day, 3 new people chatting every day, right? We will have community where there's basically 0 people chatting every day, right? So sometimes we have community projects that would like hire moderators, and the moderators doesn't know what to do. Like, what is the point of hiring moderators if there's no activity? You can do things, tag users. So usually we recommend you to have a welcome log. In this welcome log, it's like blah, 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 join the community, right? So we use Vic as our welcome log because we use Vic as verification. So you see this person has joined the server. What happens is that when you have a really cold server, people will look at this and go like, oh, I don't want to ask questions, or I don't want to interact. I'm afraid it's like really awkward. So this is where the community, the moderators go and tag the users. So this user joined the server, you tag this user, you say, oh, how's it going? Or, something related to projects. It could be related to them. We're going to talk more about like how to do the interactions. It's not going to work 100% of the time, but you have to start somewhere. And this is like a really proactive way for you to actually start generating engagement activities. And by the way, this is not just about server who has no activity. Sometimes you have server that is extremely technical, that what people do, which happened in our server, which is why we have kind of like such a low rate at the very beginning, is that people have a question. So what they do is that they just open up a ticket. They don't even go to general chat, and they want their question answered. And once the question is answered, they're gone. This is actually the same situation when there's basically nobody talking. So where the moderators, like they, when they open up a ticket, it's a different experience, right? You're basically answering the questions. But what the moderators can do at this point is basically to drag them out of the technical mode and bring them to the general chat and make it more social. Like that's really important. It's kind of hard at the very beginning. Okay, another thing, there's like 2 KPIs related to it. First is basically, okay, so if a user send a message, what are the chances of them sending the second message, right? Basically, your whole goal is like in the first 15 minutes when a new user joins the server, you want them to have a great experience. So if a user sending just one message, like clearly something is wrong, right? So you want to kind of like, the benchmark we have is 67% of the user who ever chatted needs to chat more than one message. And there's a very related KPI, which is basically 5 minutes retention. So you can roughly think about, especially when you're relatively new, one message is about 2 minutes of interactions, right? So it's like one message, and then you getting somebody to reply, and then you reply to that person's reply. So 2 messages is roughly like 5 minutes. So this is what we track. We want this number to be as high as possible, but we think 50% is the benchmark that you should hit for. So this basically interact with like T+1 situations, right? When you have the first message, how do you get users to send more message and make them more engaged? Clearly, again, like I think at early stage, moderators and core team makes a huge difference. I don't think, like, of course, like the faster the moderator responds, the better. But even if you respond like after 12 hours, people will still come back. I think 12 hours to 24 hours is a pretty good range that people will still come back. But there are different things on your community that could potentially make your server kind of like people send only one message, right? The most common situation I've seen is actually when you have a GMGN channel. It's almost like great and a curse at the same time. Like usually people have GMGN because they wanted to separate the low quality conversation with the higher quality conversation. But what happened is that when you say GMGN and you don't know anything about this project, people just stop there because they think, okay, I'm like interacting, I'm probably gonna get some token. You need to kind of convert them. You need to move them from the GMGN channel to the general channel. So again, this is the part about like tagging your users or something. You should ask your new user about how familiar they are with your projects, because we have communities that they made it really hard for new users to interact. So what they would do is they will like block certain keywords. So when you try like 5 times with hello and it's like not working, you're just not going to do this anymore, right? So those are the small little details that you should be aware of. They kill basically initial interactions. There is a question coming from the chat. Okay. Okay, so you're talking about easy discussions without making them difficult for newcomers, but it depends on the projects. If it's entertaining content, there are more chance to build colorful conversation. But what if a project is more serious? Then we have more technical talk and questions. What we do in this case? Okay. It's a great question. We've had some communities in our like using our bot that has extremely technical conversations. So this is a choice that you make. This is almost like intentional by design. If you have a TGE, right? If you needed hype, you cannot make the server super technical because there are less technical people out there in the world versus non-technical people. If you think that your server, if you are building a product, for example, if you are developer communities and you just want the developers, right, then maybe it's the right thing to ignore like the pure GMGNers, right? They probably will never learn about the ZK layers that you're building because they're not your target audience. So, but on the flip side, you're not gonna get the hype that you want. So that's kind of like the extreme cases, right? But there are also things in between. So for example, in our community, we have people that probably would never use our bot. They just come in here. I don't know why. But there are people who I think we can talk about our stories and convert them into using our product. So for example, right, there are smaller server owners. They might not be interested at the very beginning, but because they like our community, they hang around, they check the announcement channel all the time, and we talk about the products all the time. They eventually got converted. So if you think, so it will depend, right? If you think there is a way, there is almost like a user journey that they will eventually get converted into using your product, you should do that. So that's when the social part does come in, because social people, I would say, like people might come in for a purpose, but they stay because they like the community. And it's never because this community is super smart, but because they had a great time interacting with people there. Yeah, I hope this might answer some of the questions. Yeah, but I would say, like, for the other thing is basically how you build your community. That also make a difference, right? So we build our community after we have the product. So at the very beginning, there's a lot of people asking questions and need technical support. So our community looks like, yeah, it doesn't like normal people wouldn't really come into it. So if you're building a community that way, then it will naturally get more technical. But even with technical people, right, you do want to branch out to be more social. If you notice any great developer, so I give you some example. We saw this, like, one of the best developer community. So basically, you can put code, and they will review your code, and they will have blogs and forums where people can post about their like job searching journey, right? So that's a very social thing. It's still related to programming, but you're not talking personal stuff. So you can also, and that actually significantly help with engagement and makes this community feels like, yeah, I can hang around here and get inspired. So there are also things you can do even if you're from a technical point of view to start. Okay. And then the final thing about message, about like engagement, is basically like how many message does the user chat when they start chatting, right? So this is slightly different from if you're chatting more than one message or not. This is like you want to get them the higher the better, right? Clearly in this case. This is actually a function, like how engaged people are, how much time people spend on your community is a function about like the interaction of everybody, not just the moderators. Like we notice people will come back, lurkers will come back after a year if you have a really strong communities, right? And lurkers don't come back for you, they come back for almost like everybody inside this community. But we notice like some of the best way of kind of start interacting with the user is by asking about their personal life. So you look at their profile pictures, and they usually have a bio. Legit account always have a bio about what they're working on. Start conversations there, right? Start conversations around their username. Like if you are kind of like more social driven, that's like how you get started. So that's something to take. Well, usually for this number message per active user, we usually like about maybe a year ago, we see this number around 3 message per users kind of within our database. So we have maybe 2,000 community using our bot so far. Now we're seeing this number going up. So around like 3-4 message per active communicators. I think it has something to do with the fact that the market is slowing down. Those are Web3 data, so there's like more engaged and more intensely interested users. So there's kind of like less casual users at this point. Quality of the conversation. So this is basically like how do you have a quality of the conversation? I think we can have like a whole class about this, but things you can do, easy things you can do, talking longer sentence. People learn from the moderators about how they should act at the very beginning. You want to reply and mention users often because this is how they get the notification. And people also learn that you can reply other users. So then you start teaching people about like they can interact with other people. Find a topic that members are interested. So this is the one thing that we do. It's very hard to know what topic would drive within your community. It's almost by random, right? So the best thing you can do is you talk a lot about your life, talk about trending topics on Twitter, asking them what they think about different things. And then what you should do is that you should notice about like what's happening. Some topics are a lot more controversial and get like a lot more people engaging versus others. So again, it's different in our community, right? So you try this many times. Of course, you're gonna have many failing points, but like even now we have some stable topic that we know like it's gonna get people really interested. iPhone versus Android, keto diet, fitness. Apparently, people would just discuss like a lot about those topics, right? So write it down. Like this is kind of your library of getting people to be engaged. This is on the social side, right? Finally, is you should think about like especially when you are so most of the community that we've seen, no matter how big like their Discord server size is. I mean, we've had community that has 100K member. We have community that has like 50 people, right? Mostly we see the active number of chatting users ranges from say 10, like less than 10, to the highest we see is basically 100, right? There are some outliers. We see maybe one server that has a couple thousand people, but they're not Web3. So if you think about no matter how big your community is, just really at most 100 people that you're interacting with on a daily basis. Usually it's going to be around 15. That's our medium size. So 15 people chatting on your community every day. You should think about community management as a hitting one person at a time sort of a tactic. Like individual matters a lot. So one of the things that we started to, again, you can find it on our analytics. I think you have a sense too, but this is something to be aware, is you want to keep in touch with the users that used to be active but no longer active, right? So for example, in this case, we give you data about a list of user, like when are they active, like how many people they talk to, social reach, right? How many time they spend on the community, like what's the most active date and when is this person most active and what's this person like favorite channel to chat. Because then you can bring this data to the moderators and start tagging them. People love it when you go like, oh yeah, like when are you coming back? You know, like how's it going? In our case, like LGA, like he was super active and then for like 2 weeks period of time, he was just gone. So we were like tagging him. Apparently, a lot of people were tagging him in the server because we all missed him. Now he was like he had some exam. Now he comes back basically like every week, even though I think he's quite busy lately, right? So think about this almost like like one user at a time. So the flip side is the same, right? So you want to reward the user that's up and coming. You're going to have users that start to get more engaged, right? They start to be like people eventually spend time on your community, will be very interested in your projects and want to know how to contribute, right? But you want to cultivate that process and you want to almost make sure they get to the point where they're super, super interested in devoting their time into your projects. So rewarding user is the best way. Right? You find a user. So for example, we give you a list of users again, right? We tell you how many people they've chatted, they've like talked to, how many time they spend on the community. Reward them. Go like, oh, hey, I see you. You're super active. Oh, what do you like? Give them some acknowledgement. Like reward is not just monetary, right? It could be it could totally be just an acknowledgement reward. So one of the very interesting KPI that we are giving you, so we just revamped our analytics, so this is kind of like a V2 version of it, is basically this concept of social reach, right? As I mentioned before, we noticed that the more people you talk to, the higher likely that you're gonna come back. So this is a great indicators about like how they actually, like what are the chances of them coming back. Somebody who have 39 social reach, basically talking to 39 people, chances of them coming back is quite high versus somebody who only talked to like 4 people, even though they talk to, that's kind of like that's something to be aware of. That's it on the analytics side. I hope this is helpful. If you have any questions, leave it on the chat, and I'm gonna see how I can answer them. And if you wanted to see kind of like your data, you can download our bot. It's free, actually. It's as a freemium model, but like you should get most of the data with the free version. So it's completely self-serving, and yeah. Okay. If there is, I'm gonna give it maybe like another minute or two. Also, feel free to kind of leave a message if you have any questions about like any aspect of your Discord community. Okay. If there is no questions, we will have a recording session of this, and I will circulate the presentation after the meeting is over. All right, cool. Thank you for showing up, everybody, and I hope this is helpful to you guys. Bye.